In the history of British car making, there is one name that comes up consistently: Austin. Founded in 1905 by Herbert Austin in an abandoned printworks in Longbridge, the company went on to create some incredibly iconic and successful models, from one of their first cars, the 2530 in 1909, to the incredible Austin 3 litre, launched in 1968. Austin cars were a staple of the British motoring industry for decades, which led to the abandoned printworks, inside which Herbert Austin begun his empire, transforming into a sprawling complex, where in its golden years of the 60s, employed around 25,000 workers. But there are some Austin cars that are lost to time. From hot Allegros to Austin Healeys made to go up against Jaguar E-types, and incredible prototypes with missed opportunities. This is the story of some of the most mysterious and forgotten Austin and BMC prototypes. Hello everybody and welcome to this video. If you're not subscribed, please make sure to do so. It really does help me out and you get to see more of this. Drop a like on the video and drop your Austin memories below. Now this is a video on some of the most amazing concepts, really limited run cars and one-offs that Austin produced, as well as BMC. So it's a real interesting one. Without further delay, let's get into the video. The Allegro Equip. The Austin Allegro, launched in 1973, was a misunderstood small family car designed by Harris Mann and built by British Leyland. This little car ended up wrongly becoming the punchline in a lot of British Leyland jokes, mainly down to its quadratic steering wheel, which all of a sudden in 2024 doesn't seem like such a silly idea. In the late 1970s, the Allegro wasn't selling particularly well compared to the Austin 1100 and 1300 it replaced. Therefore, British Leyland's Austin Morris division decided a new route was needed to create a model to top the Allegro range. With souped-up cars like the Alfa Sud TI selling particularly well and subsequently enhancing the sales of the lower-end models in their ranges, this wasn't a bad idea by any means, and with the flagging sales of the Series 2 Allegro and the Series 3 due to be released in 1979, something was needed to provide the range with a much-needed shot of adrenaline. BL's Longbridge operation put together a team of talented young stylists, including Stephen Harper, an Austin apprentice straight off of his work on the Allegro Special LE. The Equip was essentially a continuation of this theme. The engine was a 1750 4-cylinder E-Series equipped with twin SU carburetors, developing 90 brake horsepower. The exterior was restyled as well, with bold graphics, GKN wheels, and a front splitter with front fog lights. Inside, the Equip had an alloy spoke steering wheel and unique upholstery. The car was launched in spring of 1979. Sadly though, the press car taken up by the team to display at the event ended up without its signature graphics, leaving the PR team in the early hours of the morning to stick the graphics on themselves. Shortly after the announcement, a rather special customer called British Leyland, World War II ace Sir Douglas Bader, credited with 22 aerial victories, 4 shared victories, and many more incredible accomplishments. He was interested in the new Allegro, but with a catch. The manual-only Allegro needed to be an automatic, but for such a legend, there were people at Longbridge who could make exceptions. The Allegro Equip was only in BL price lists from June 1979 until September 1979, making it one of the shortest on-sale vehicles ever made by British Leyland. Today, a handful survive, one of which is at the British Motor Museum. Sadly though, it's not known what happened to Sir Douglas Bader's one-off Equip automatic. The Austin Healey 4000 ADO 30. The Austin Healey 4000 is one of the most incredible stories in the history of Austin Healey. A car that went from a simple design competition to nearly becoming the flagship to push Austin Healey into the big leagues. It all starts though in 1961, with Swiss-based publication Automobile Year organising a competition to celebrate its 10th year of publication. This competition was a simple design brief, open to all people and organisations. The design brief is as follows. The car had to be an automobile which allows at least 2 people with luggage to make long journeys in all weathers with speed, comfort and safety. The prize was 10,000 Swiss francs, making it an interesting proposition. But what made it far more exciting for designers was the winning design would be produced as a one-off by Pininfarina and exhibited at 3 international motor shows. The winning entry was somewhat of a surprise, a car based on the Austin Healey 3000, designed by 3 students from a university in West Germany. A graceful design that was also quite true to the roots of the car it was based upon. The car was produced in 1962 by Pininfarina and was featured at the Earls Court Motor Show and later the Turin Motor Show of that year, with its last appearance being at the 1963 Geneva Salon. This wasn't the end of the story though. With George Harriman now in charge of BMC, the company was looking for a new model to top the range, becoming the flagship sports car for BMC, pushing Austin Healey into higher esteemed territory. This resulted in BMC acquiring the rights for the winning design. This led to, in 1963, Project ADO 30 being created, with the Jaguar E-Type firmly in its sights, a car that was unsurpassed at the time in its category. The car was also selected to be at the technical vanguard as a road-ready showcase for the British Motor Corporation's emerging technologies. This meant hydroelastic suspension was chosen. The engine chosen was the 6-cylinder 4-litre Rolls-Royce FB60 used in the Vanden Plas Princess 4-litre R. The project, though, didn't have a launch date, leaving the teams that worked on the car with no sense of urgency. And it kept going in several directions as well, with the original fixed-head coupe design being changed to incorporate a 2+2 layout, and later on a convertible to directly compete with both lines of the Jaguar E-Type. The moving target of the project with no set deadlines and workload at the time within BMC led to team members resenting the project, referring to it as Fireball XL5 in a nod to the 1962 children's sci-fi puppet show. Another bump in the road was the hydroelastic suspension, with the units being too heavy for a sports car and compromising the ride and handling. BMC then approached Rolls-Royce to develop a twin-cam version of the FB60 engine to leapfrog the E-Type with an estimated output of 268 brake horsepower, putting it comfortably ahead of the XK as well. But BMC refused to approach Rolls-Royce to develop it further, and the highly promising engine was abandoned, leaving the ADO 30 with the original FB60 engine. In 1966 though, Jaguar merged with BMC. With that, many thought the project was over. With Jaguar now under BMC's vast umbrella, there was no need to produce a competitor. But somehow the project plodded on, with lingering resentment. With Jaguar's engines being explored instead of the Rolls-Royce power unit, the hydroelastic suspension was then replaced with the MGC's suspension setup. The project was then pitched down market, changing the brief again to be a bargain version of the E-Type, but with a lack of support from Jaguar and with BMC's worsening financial state, the project was cancelled in 1967. It is not known what happened to the car originally produced by Pininfarina or the prototypes, but these are believed to have been destroyed. The Ogle Design Princess 1978. The Austin Princess ADO 71 was an avant-garde large family car, which started production in 1975 to replace the Austin Morris 1800 range. The Princess had a distinctive and divisive design, being nicknamed the Wedge, not as an aerodynamic one though, but rather as a wedge of cheese. The latter though was more true. The car had a lot of innovations, one of which being aerodynamics, beating the Cortina Mark III's drag coefficient with its streamlined design, and hiding various drag-causing elements such as the wiper spindles. This led to glass manufacturer Triplex commissioning a one-off design of the Princess in 1978, the Triplex Glassback 1020. The car was going to be a technology demonstrator for Triplex, but first a suitable design studio had to be appointed to create this car. Ogle Design, creators of the Bush TR82 and Scimitar GTE, were appointed to design the new car. With the new car being a technology demonstrator, this Princess would have to have the latest in triplex glass technology. A 1020 super laminated windscreen which reduced facial cuts by an average of 99% on head impact, triplex high-vis coating providing an invisible radio aerial built into the windscreen, and a very thin triplex door glass measuring at 3mm thick, saving weight and fuel. This car though would become more than a glass demonstrator and ended up creating a Princess but improved significantly. Gone were the chrome and mid-70s styling elements, and in were graphics, blacked out grills and most importantly, the hatchback that the Princess had been lacking. Sadly though, this version of the Princess was not to be produced, but did demonstrate a Princess for the 1980s. The triplex Ogle Design Glassback 1020 survives today and is currently in the care of the British Motor Museum on display. The Austin AR16. In the mid-1980s, British Leyland, now slimmed down and renamed Austin Rover Group, were riding on the success of the Metro, Maestro and Montego, but with the Maestro reaching its sales peak in 1984 at 80,000 units, the company knew they needed a new range. This, however, wasn't going to last long, with the culmination of Project XX, the Rover 800, due to arrive in 1986. Roy Axe and the team knew the current Austin range would not live up to the incoming Rover 800, with these cars not maintaining the new clean and sharp design language. It was also known that in order for Austin Rover to return to profitability, they had to build on the success of their current range. Therefore, a new range was needed to sustain Austin Rover through to the mid-90s. The Rover 800 project would then be joined by a series of cars that shared its design language: the AR6 Super Mini, AR8 Family Hatch, and the medium-sized AR16, the Montego replacement. The AR16 was Austin Rover's hope at maintaining competitiveness in the fleet market. Therefore, a hatch and saloon variant was needed to go head-to-head with the heavy hitters in the sector, the Ford Sierra and Vauxhall Cavalier. Instead of a Honda collaboration, the AR16 will be based on a re-engineered version of the Montego chassis, with a lengthened wheelbase. The engine lineup would be the S-Series 1.6 litre, 2 litre O Series and the M16 2 litre 16 valve engine, which would be later replaced by the T Series. There was also an estate car in mind as well to replace the Ital Estate, which would be designated the AR17. A deadline for the car was then set for a 1988 to 89 launch. The Austin designs were showing the brand still had life left in it, but then it was decided in 1985 that the car would have its Austin badging dropped to become the Rover 400. However, due to the cash flow issues experienced by Austin Rover, lack of government support and the Montego underperforming in the market, it was decided to cancel the project in 1988. This was to be replaced with a more conservative version of the car being used as a facelift for the Montego, which plodded on until 1995 after dropping its Austin badging entirely. The Austin AR6. As mentioned in the earlier segment on the AR16, Austin Rover in the mid-80s were looking at the future to continue their success with the Metro, Maestro and Montego. This of course meant to join the Rover 800 and Austin AR16, replacements for the Metro and Maestro were needed to complete the range. Enter the innovative, aluminium-bodied AR6 to replace the Metro. The genesis of the new Austin Rover range was when Roy Axe's studio in Canley was created in 1982. Its first project was the XX program, the Rover 800, but by the end of the year of the studio's formation, a new Metro replacement was also being explored. This would be designated the AR6. The engineering team at Gaydon were also working on the AR6, moving it away from the hydrogas suspension of the Austin Metro to a more traditional McPherson strut suspension system, making the car easier to produce and handling sharper. Meanwhile, the body styling was taking shape. Styled by Roy Axe's team, the car was highly aerodynamic, and an early prototype was produced. The car would find its roots in the advanced ECV3 program and the Alcan Austin Rover aluminium projects, making it more efficient than the Metro it intended to replace. The AR6 would use the currently in development K-Series engine, with a twist, an unreleased 3-cylinder variant, to achieve the 100 miles per gallon ambition, which would be echoed decades later by VW's Lupo 3L. As the project progressed, in late 1984 the design was evolving further, with the advanced design sketch created by Stephen Harper being given the go-ahead to be explored further, known as the mouse design theme, and a half-clay model being produced, shared between designers Stephen Harper and David Saddington. Rover management then reviewed the clay models and came to the conclusion that both designs were too advanced to continue development. This led to the more conventional proposal based closely on Roy Axe's 1983 design being approved. The advanced engineering stages were then initiated, the most critical stages of the car's journey to the road, but with Austin Rover's financial issues, the aluminium shell was dropped due to cost, with the lack of funding posing issues, but the project was not over yet. This though wasn't a bump in the road. It was a full-blown Barnett-style pothole. With a conventional steel body, the 100 miles per gallon ambition was cast aside. And with Austin Rover handed to the new BL chairman Graham Day to manage, his mission was simple: get the company into shape and sell it off as soon as possible. The AR6 would then be cancelled due to the costs of getting it into production, leaving the company's future small car presence, which had been its strongest seller at the time, uncertain. The AR6 later evolved into the R6, which would be a reboot Metro for the 90s. The AR6 prototype is the only one believed to exist, and is currently on display in the British Motor Museum. Austin ADO 22. The BMC 1100 and 1300 or ADO 16 models were an incredible success, selling 2.1 million units during its production run. BMC and Austin were clearly onto something. In 1966, it was understood that a follow-up was needed to continue the success of the AD-016. This led to the creation of AD-22, led by Roy Haynes' design team at the Cowley Design Office. These new cars were an update to the current AD-016, but with a twist. More modern styling and simplified with lessons learned from the current range's production lines to make it more profitable. AD-022 was good for the pockets of the company too. A simple restyle wasn't the norm of British manufacturers of the time, so AD-022 would have improved the appeal of the AD-016 platform as an evolution rather than a revolution, keeping down development costs. But then, in 1968, the merger to merge all mergers happened, and British Leyland was created. It was quickly decided by the new management team a revolution was needed by the way of the Allegro, leading to the project for the UK market being halted. However, this led to the car being produced as the Austin Apache in South Africa and the Authy Victoria in Spain. The Austin Aquilla. The Austin Maxi, launched in 1969, remained largely unchanged during its 13-year production run. Its quaint but sometimes described as plain Jane styling by its critics was considered a negative by its detractors. However, in 1971, this would all change when the Institute of British Carriage and Automobile Manufacturers and the Daily Telegraph teamed up to launch the 1971-72 British Styling Competition. Participants were asked to produce a design of a small family saloon suitable for 1976 onwards, based on the humble Austin Maxi. This led to one entry, the Austin Aquilla, submitted by Christopher Field, winning first prize. A team of companies then came together to make Christopher's car a reality as a roadworthy prototype, with British Leyland bearing the brunt of the financial burden, as well as the donation of the Maxi to use as the base car. BL even agreed to transport the car to and from events and road test it. The car was unveiled in 1973 at the Earls Court Motor Show, on the joint stand of the project sponsors. The design was striking, with deep wide windows, a low midline, with aerodynamics considered as well. Plastic bumpers were also incorporated, presenting a Maxi for the next decade. The Aquilla, though, was only ever a one-off. Some speculate that the design may have influenced Harris Mann and his AD-099 project that later became the Austin Maestro. The Aquilla still exists today, but is in the care of an enthusiast. The Austin LC10. The Austin Maestro was BL's smash hit for the 80s, replacing the 12-year-old Maxi with a new fresh design, dubbed on its launch as the Miracle Maestro. But the story of the Maestro starts with the LC10 prototype, a car that bears no resemblance to the final Maestro, except for, of course, the inset lights and front design. This hand-built car was built 7 years before the Maestro, and is a showcase of how ahead the project was, but with the insistence that the Metro be launched first, the project didn't get the resources needed. The LC10, though, is a bit of a mystery. It is not known who designed the bodywork on this car. Some elements are David Bache-esque, but there are also rumours that Bertone designed the car as well. The LC10 survives today at the British Motor Museum. The Austin Metro Ranger. The Metro Ranger was born out of the Metro's success in the early 80s, with Austin Rover's design and marketing teams looking for ways to enhance the current range. This led to a very niche project being explored by Austin Rover, the Metro Ranger. The car aimed to capture the recreational market. Nearly half of the Metro's rear was cut off to create a flatbed with an isolated two-seater cabin. Rollover bars, spotlights and bumpers were also added. The Ranger also had its own set of bespoke graphics, and to finish it off, some period-correct mini-light wheels. The Metro Ranger, though, was not to be. After the similar Talbot Wind failed to capture the same market as the Metro Ranger was proposed for, the project was cancelled, as it was believed it wouldn't enhance the Metro's range or provide additional sales. This car predated the ADC Metro R6 Scout. The whereabouts of the only Metro Ranger produced are currently unknown, but many people have produced their own Metro pickups. The Austin Healey X300. The Austin Healey 3000 is one of the best British sports convertibles ever made. Built at Abingdon, with bodywork by Jensen and engineering of the car by Austin Healey, the 3-litre Healey was a BMC success story. In 1960, BMC created one of the most incredible and mysterious Healeys ever made, the X300. Designed on a custom chassis with an uprated de Dion tube-based rear end, the car's engine also received work, uprating the 136 brake horsepower in the standard Healey to 150 brake horsepower, with 3 twin-choke Webers feeding the engine. Unique features of the X300 were four-wheel disc brakes, the Dion rear end with axle shafts, telescopic hydraulic shocks anchored to a Watts linkage, rack and pinion steering, 4-inch wider track than the stock Austin Healey, 25-gallon long-range fuel tank, 4-wheel wing arches, factory hardtop, 4 headlamps, unique front and rear bumpers, and a competition steering wheel. The styling exercise, though, was abandoned, and the car's history is a mystery in itself. But it isn't as clear-cut as one might think. Jeff Healey confirmed that the original quad-lamp Healey X300 was scrapped, with this new car appearing to be a recreation, using some of the original parts, but of course this is unconfirmed. It is also speculated that 20 of these prototypes were made, with 19 of these being destroyed. These were created supposedly for the 24 Hours of Le Mans, but this cannot be verified. But if it is true, this car could be the sole survivor. The car, whether the original X300 or a modified recreation, survives today and is part of a private collection. The Austin Xander. The Austin Xander, although a concept, is an important stepping stone in British Leyland's history. Back in 1968, British Leyland didn't have a complete styling studio, with styling for both the North American dollar area and European market being split across Cowley and Longbridge. This led to a unified team headed up by Roy Haynes and his deputy Harris Mann being created at Pressed Steel. In 1968, Pressed Steel's body plant developed a new computer-aided design technique. This meant a showcase was in order, and what better to showcase this new design than the new team? This gave birth to the Austin Xander, a concept sports car that was more 80s than 60s. The Xander proposal would use the Austin Max's powertrain driving the rear wheels. Sadly though, the Xander was not to be, and after its display at the British International Motor Show in 1969, it was confined to the history books. Some say this car did eventually take to the road as a TR7, which can trace some of its styling elements back to the Xander. The team that created the Austin Xander would go on to create some of the most iconic BL models ever made. The TR7, Metro and Marina, to name a few. The mock-up survives today and is preserved at the British Motor Museum. Austin and BMC made staples of British car history, often misunderstood and due to the uncontrollable giant that was BL, poorly executed in some cases. When the 1980s came and the new line of Austins were created, little did we know that these would be the last to wear the nameplate, with it being officially retired from all models in 1988, ending the Austin car's legacy. The incredible Longbridge site where Herbert Austin began his empire in 1905 is now largely rubble, after the last mass-market British-owned car manufacturer collapsed in 2005, 100 years after Austin's beginnings. But the legacy of Longbridge still remains in the new development, with streets named after models built at the vast site, which was once the heart of the community.